The technical evolution of firearms underwent a strong acceleration from the second half of the 19th century. Muzzle-loading rifles, which had dominated the battlefields for at least 3 centuries, were progressively replaced by breech-loading rifles, which allowed for a reduction in the necessary operations to operate the weapon. With the rapid evolution of firearms and the prevalence of repeating rifles in European arsenals, people began to question how to minimize the operations required to operate the weapon. It was no longer enough for the infantryman to simply open and close the weapon's breech, aim, press the trigger, and only reload the magazine when necessary. Inventors of the time, including the famous Maxim and Mannlicher, began to develop a new type of weapon, automatic firearms. In Italy, the first ever semi-automatic rifle was designed by Colonel Gaspare Freddi. It was presented in 1886, a few years after the models by Maxim and Mannlicher, which were introduced in 1884 and 1885, respectively. Over a span of 14 years, between 1886 and 1900, the officer of the Italian Royal Army presented various models that essentially shared the same operating principle. They were rifles with a sliding rifled barrel in which, under the pressure exerted by the gases on the base of the cartridge case when the shot was fired, the barrel and the locking mechanism moved backward. To be precise, one of them was not strictly semi-automatic, as it required supplementary hand pressure to achieve bolt closure. Recoil, with the help of a buffer, automatically opened the breech and ejected the spent cartridge case. The first model, presented in 1886 and documented in the Rivista di Artiglieria Eugenio of 1887, is based on the standard rifle of the Italian infantry, the Fucile mod. 1870, the operating principle of the weapon, described earlier, allowed the infantryman a remarkable rate of fire for the time, as an average soldier could fire about 24 shots per minute. The rifle lacks a magazine, so each time a shot is fired, the new cartridge is manually inserted by the soldier, and the breech is closed by the buffer, triggered by pressing a light sear spring. To facilitate rapid firing, Freddy decided to mount a spring hook on the right side of the weapon, to which a 12-round cartridge holder could be attached. Nothing new was invented here, this solution was already known to many during those years. The ideal use of the weapon is described by the officer as follows. To achieve rapid fire, the soldier attaches a loaded cartridge holder to the stock, assumes the aiming position, and continues firing in this position without moving the weapon from the shoulder until all 12 cartridges are exhausted. Once the cartridge holder is emptied, the soldier takes the ready position, replaces it with another loaded one, and continues firing as before, but removing the weapon from the shoulder with each shot to avoid excessive fatigue. In this way, all 24 shots can be comfortably fired in just 1 minute, including the time required to insert and change the cartridge holder. However, the first 12 shots are executed in just 20 seconds. From an economic point of view, he decided to preserve the majority of the base Fucile parts, estimating a conversion cost of 5.35 lire. Freddy presented a second model in 1888, which was a carbine intended to arm the troops in Africa. According to the thoughts of the then captain, in a hostile terrain like the colonies, it was more advantageous to use a carbine instead of a conventional rifle because it would be easier to use due to its lighter weight and greater maneuverability. It is natural that in countries where the climate and the wild nature of the terrain contribute to the exhaustion of the European soldier's strength, and where victory almost always depends on the speed of movements, it is natural, I say, that the carbine is preferred over the rifle as a lighter and shorter weapon and therefore easier to transport and handle. He then emphasizes the fact that the range of a carbine is ideal for the colonial theater, supporting his thesis based on the events of Dogali. According to the information provided by the few survivors of Dogali, our column's fire was initiated at a distance of approximately 700 m, and it was necessary to suspend it several times to have a better view of the target and to be able to adjust the aim more effectively, as it was recognized to have very little effectiveness. Just like the previous project, he started with a Fucile base, modifying a Model 1870 carbine, making the same modifications but also adopting an 8mm cartridge, which was quite different from the usual 10.35 by 47mm R. The officer subjected the weapon to numerous tests and published the collected data in his illustrative article published in the Rivista di Artiglieria Eugenio. It is interesting to note that the rate of fire is slightly lower compared to the rifle presented the previous year, with approximately 17 to 19 shots per minute. From various shooting experiments conducted with the described carbine at a distance of 150 m against a square target measuring 1.50 m on each side, aiming at each shot to determine the achievable rate of fire in accordance with the required effectiveness, the following results were obtained. Neither of the two projects, despite some interest shown by the press and some senior officers, was seriously considered, probably due to the estimated costs being deemed too excessive. Despite this, Gaspar continued to work hard in an attempt to produce a rifle that fully satisfied the Royal Army. It is noteworthy that his designs followed the incredible evolution of firearms. In this period of transition, characterized by the adoption of smokeless powder and the magazine, he sought to capitalize on the moment by combining his own system with these latest technological advancements. In 1891, he proposed 4 new prototypes, the first 2 being single-shot, on which it is almost pointless to dwell as their functioning is nearly identical to the previously described models. The only substantial variations consist of the fact that the rifles were newly manufactured, no longer adaptations of old models. The first weighed 3.800 kilograms and the second 4.1 kilograms. Both used a new cartridge, also designed by Freddy, with a caliber of 7.5 mm. The last substantial modification concerned the cartridge holder, replaced by cardboard packets containing 8 bullets. These cartridges are arranged with the bullet facing downwards in 2 parallel rows, separated by a brass wire netting, woven just below the packet opening, to prevent the cartridges from tipping over or falling. A step at the bottom of the packet creates a difference in level between the 2 rows of cartridges and facilitates extraction. A canvas handle is sewn externally to the packet to keep it in place. The packet is closed by a cardboard cover, held in place by an externally glued strip of canvas, with a protruding tab used as a grip to tear off the cover when needed. During firing, the soldier holds it to the right side of the rifle with the handle against the stock, and inserts the 4 fingers of the left hand into the handle. This way, he has the advantage of finding his cartridges ready under the loading opening, without the need to take them one by one from the cartridge pouch. However, these 2 weapons did not represent a significant step forward, especially considering that most European countries had already adopted multiple loading, repeating rifles. The last 2, following this line of thought, were in fact repeating firearms equipped with an internal magazine. The internal mechanisms of operation are essentially the same as the previous 2 single-shot models, with the addition of mechanisms that allow the weapon to be automatically fed using the magazine. The first one had a caliber of 7.5 mm and was equipped with a symmetrical clip containing 5 cartridges, which could be inserted into the magazine from either the top or bottom, or with a packet magazine. The second one had a caliber of 6.5 mm and used the Vitali clip and a packet magazine proposed by Lieutenant Colonel Cav. Bertoldo, both capable of holding 5 cartridges. None of the projects lived up to expectations. For the last time, Gaspar set to work and in 1900 presented an automatic rifle. However, this too never saw the success that its designer had hoped for.